It's Monday morning. It's the Done Deal Show live with Dean Jones. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, obviously we did a bit of Jubilee weekend here, didn't we? So been 4 days of drinking basically, isn't it? And barbecues and trying to dodge the rain. But how
Dodging the
you
rain.
feeling?
Yeah, good, mate. Stopping the kids from running into the street. We had the street
Yeah,
shut off. The
yeah.
little one loved running off because he thought it was funny. But the difference was amazing. Freya, she had like Disney dresses on, the crown. I'm a queen. I'm a princess.
Yeah.
Jackson just sticking his hand down drains. That's all he was doing. The difference between my boy and my girl is unbelievable. But yeah, really nice weekend, mate. And it feels like this morning that the sort of it's almost now the transfer window is like open fully. So many stories. And of course, we're going to delve into a lot of the reports today, get your take on them, what you know as well. Viewers, any questions you've got, get them into the live comment section. Member chats and super chats will always prioritize as you're donating and keeping the terrace going. We have a poll running as well. Where do you think Frenkie de Jong will be playing football next season? 49% think Man United. 24% think Barca, 16% Man City, and 11% think other. So get your votes in there for us. And I suppose Frenkie de Jong's a really good place to start because the news on this is very interesting, Dean, because you've kind of got the Spanish and the Catalonian-based media over the past 4 or 5 days talking about the board aren't happy with him maybe as a player. They're close to an I love the way how it gets translated, economical agreement with Manchester United. United are pushing ahead. We could see something substantial next week. The deal between the clubs is close. Financial problems. They need to sell to buy. Yet the English media is a little bit more kind of agent-y talk, Barca talk. United are not really progressing it as aggressively as others are making out. Like, what's your understanding of the current De Jong situation? And could there be a breakthrough for one of the Manchester clubs, because now, City are linked with him again this morning, in the next week or so? What's your understanding of that current situation?
I think it's funny that City are now being mentioned again in the conversation. I mean, as soon as United were linked, I was like, I did a piece of Give Me Sport, and I was like, if Man United are genuinely going for Frenkie de Jong, if he's available, Man City will come into that conversation. Like, there's no way that they're going to let that pass. Like, they've got that exact area of the field opened up. They've just tried to sign Paul Pogba, didn't get him. They want somebody of good status, of good pedigree to go into that midfield. How could they ignore Frenkie de Jong? But the kind of briefings straight off the back of it were Man City saying, we're not in for Frenkie de Jong. And I'm like, we'll see. And now, like, they're starting to arise again. I just don't believe that Man City would let United have a free run at signing Frenkie if he was genuinely available on the market. And then you are faced with a situation for Man United whereby, yes, like the whole Ten Hag thing, I'm sure is intriguing to get Frenkie de Jong. But what about the Pep Guardiola angle? Like, Frenkie de Jong's gone this Cruyffian route from Ajax to Barcelona. Would he not be enticed to go with Pep Guardiola, who's come from Barcelona, and play that style of football? Or is he going to put all his faith in Ten Hag being the man that fixes Man United and gets it right? It's a big show of faith that. Like, that's a big leap to go from Barcelona to Man United. And even though Barcelona aren't the Barcelona we all knew and loved, some people love, some people hate, but like the type of football we like to watch, they've started their rebuild so quickly. They're bouncing back so fast to get back in the title race for next season. And Man United, 8 years later, are still kind of similar phases where they were. So from what I understand, like, Frenkie's absolute preference is to stay at Barcelona because, like, that's the decision he made. He wanted to be a Barcelona player. He wants to be a success at Barcelona. And, especially if they end up signing like Lewandowski for next season, I find it difficult to believe that Frenkie would want to leave a project like that.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem right to me that Frenkie would want this move. But from a Barcelona angle, keep hearing about the fact that they want to cut the wage structure. They want to get the big wages off the bill. And if they are genuinely looking to do that and they're going to sign Frank Kessie, then maybe they are going to look at getting rid of Frenkie de Jong because they've got Gavi, they've got players coming through there that are willing to play in those same positions as Frenkie, and that can probably hit as high a level over the next couple of years as he's capable of doing. So it's a really difficult one to read, but as it stands, I have to believe that Frenkie de Jong's preference is to stay at Barcelona. If things change that are out of his control, then he's going to have to really make a big decision about where in Manchester he lands.
Do you know what, Dean? I think your overview is absolutely spot on. And I think that I kind of believe the Spanish press in the sense of maybe Man United and Barca are close to an agreement about what it would cost to get Frenkie de Jong out. But I believe that opens up a whole new can of worms, which, something I tweeted over the weekend was, I do feel this and I do believe this, that Frenkie de Jong is the closest he's ever been to leaving Barca. But that doesn't mean anybody knows where exactly he's going to go, because City could sit back almost Liverpool-esque, as they did with Luis Diaz, watch Liverpool do, Spurs do all the work, and then sweep in. Well, we know what the acceptable offer is now, because United have got it down to 65 million. We'll bid 65 million. Then you've got a whole different kettle of fish, because Frenkie de Jong is not 100% bought into the idea of going to Man United. That is so well reported by it doesn't matter what journalists you follow, what tiering system you put them on socials. They're all saying very much the same thing. It's whether or not you can be convinced to stay. PSG may throw their hat into the mix. They tried to get Tchouaméni. They're clearly looking at a dynamic midfield player, and it could be him. So my thoughts, based on everything I've read, people have spoken to, I feel like Barca will cash in on him, or at the very least may accept some bids. As you say, it's then down to Frenkie de Jong to look at this situation and go, well, where is the best place for me? And I've said all along that if Man United have competition in this from PSG, from a Man City, from a Liverpool, I just can't see Man United saying yes to us over those teams. It just, I know that the Ten Hag pull will be a factor, but as you say, Man City right now, champions of England, they've just signed Haaland, they've got Alvarez coming in, Pep's the manager. It isn't a rebuild, it's a ready-made to go project. It's going to be an intriguing one to see, but if they don't go in for him, and it's only Man United, if reports last week are to be believed that City aren't going to come back in for him and PSG aren't going to look at him, and it's just Man United, and Barca keep saying, we want to sell you, then of course he can come to Man United. I still there. It's just, does anybody else come in for him if Barcelona agree to sell? That's where my head's at with it, really.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're also looking at like £75 million here. Like, this is a substantial amount of money. So, like, that's the majority of United's transfer budget. One thing I did check this out with somebody else. I'm just actually going to get the text up, and from what I said to him, I said, like, what's your reading into Frenkie? And they were like, Ten Hag 100% wants him. The plan that he's spoken about is pairing him with Van der Beek and talking through this idea he's got for how this team is reborn. And that combination of Van der Beek and Frenkie de Jong is something that has been spoken about. And that is quite interesting. I said Ten Hag has spoken to de Jong to see if he fancies it. And there is a feeling that he would. And then, again, he talked about Gavi, Pedri and Frank Kessie as a potential new midfield at Barcelona. And if that all comes together, then it does become more plausible that Frenkie de Jong is an option for Man United. So, that's the sort of information I'm getting on it. There are all the bits in between to be filled in between now and whenever this transfer is decided.
Absolutely. There's a comment here from John, one of our members, that says, Dean, do you think Man United will get any of their targets without Champions League football?
I mean, some they will, yeah, because like, say, a Darwin Núñez, I believe that he'd be long-sighted enough at this point of his career and at this elevation that he's on, that he would believe that, okay, I have 1 year with no Champions League football at United, but ultimately their aim is to get back in there for the season after. And I can be part of that. I'm going to sign a 5-year contract, whatever it is. I'm going to be the main man. Ronaldo's going to move on next year. Then it's all about me. So I think for someone like him, yeah. But Frenkie de Jong, for somebody who's already elevated himself to that level and thought he was going to be challenging to win the Champions League by now, not just be in it, maybe. And for me, it's another one for him to consider, especially if Man City were on the table as a genuine option. So I think there are a difference in your targets there, because Darwin Núñez, while he's got a really high ceiling, he's not there yet. Like, he's playing at Benfica and he's got to make that next jump. Frankie's already there.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that. And on Darwin Núñez, of course, United, close in terms of agreements, with reports coming out of Portugal for the last couple of weeks. Now, Liverpool supposedly really starting to gear up their interest, although Liverpool news is very difficult to kind of tie down. Has much changed? Has there been any progression with Man United trying to bring Núñez in and sort of get that deal closed off, as it were?
No, I mean, I haven't got any new information on this beyond what we were talking about last time we were on the show. And United genuinely believe that they've got a good chance of getting Darwin. They feel that they've made a good proposal. They've made their pitch. They know he knows where they're heading under Ten Hag. There's always the possibility with somebody like Darwin that he could wait to find out who Man United's first signing actually is in that transfer window. I can see good reasons. Sometimes agents do this with clients who are on the verge of big things. They're promising us the world. Let's just wait before we make our decision and see who their first signing is, because that will be a signal of where they are heading for next season. And then you can start to gauge off the back of it where they're heading. And I think that's probably a good stance for Darwin to have right now. He doesn't need to rush into a transfer and sign it first 2 weeks of June. He can hold this out until later, July. He probably wants to be done by the time we get into, August. But for Darwin in these first couple of the weeks of the transfer market, it makes sense that he kind of feels it out.
Mate, I completely agree. It's sort of a lot of the Man United deals, it feels like there is almost this, an agreement is close. And I think, again, one of these situations that fans always feel that means it's about to be signed. But a deal can be close and then put on ice. I mean, it's very, very normal in this industry.
Yeah.
And that never gets explained on Sky Sports or BT Sport. They just, it's close. That means it's happening in the next few days. Well, no, Darwin Núñez might be happy with the money, shirt number, squad status, the apartment they're putting him in. I love the idea of the project, but I'm not signing until I want to see what, a bit like, it's a bit like going shopping sometimes with the other half. You end up going back to the first shop you went into for the first pair of shoes, but you got to check out all the other shops first, you nearly bought them. We're close to getting these shoes. But let's see what happens there. Viewers, we've got some of your Chelsea comments. We'll move on to Chelsea a little bit later. We'll kind of do club by club. It makes it a little easier. A player that was linked with Man United yesterday, Dean, Christian Eriksen. Reports of Spurs, Brentford, Man United throwing their hat into the mix, making offers, depending on what publication you read. What's the latest with him and now his connection to come into Old Trafford?
I was always told that Eriksen's decision will be expected around mid-June. That was the timeline that was given to me when we were getting to the back end of last season. Brentford had talks with him heading into that last week of the season, just made sure that he knew that they wanted him. He knew how far they could push the boat out, what they plan for next year in terms that they're not settling for where they are right now. This is just the start. But in the background, Tottenham were more than aware of his situation, totally respectful of the path he wants to take at this stage of his career. He's been through a very tough time, but he's come through it. And now he's got his sights obviously set on the World Cup as well. He wants to be in good form for that. Denmark have just had a fantastic result at the weekend. They've got high hopes for the World Cup, for being dark horses at that tournament. So Man United, set out months ago saying there's no way that we get to the summer window and Man United are not in the conversation for Christian Eriksen. That won't happen. United will 100% give it a go, because they have to. Again, it's a player that is ready and available on the market for nothing. And the caliber of play, the manager that you've got coming in, all fit. So they have to go for Eriksen. The smart money is probably on him going to Tottenham, if I'm totally honest. Tottenham is a good emotional fit for him. They've got the level of football that he's looking for.
Yeah.
The only thing, I guess, the way that we have to balance this out is what kind of management does Eriksen want at this stage? Would he prefer Ten Hag to Conte? Maybe that's the thing that falls in United's favour. And as I say, Brentford are in the background, and there are some people at Brentford who are actually expecting him to sign. I personally am not, but it's not implausible. So it's an interesting one from that aspect here.
Well, it also mirrors sort of where fans are putting their money. Spurs are currently the bookies' favourites. People are fancying that to be the move that he makes. Of course, there's that familiarity. He'll get into that. I suppose the question around Man United is almost going to be, well, if they pull off De Jong, if they're giving opportunities to Donny, back to the information you were given, Bruno's just got this new deal. Now, a lot of Man United fans will say, well, Christian Eriksen still walks into that team. He's actually better, Prem proven. A lot of United fans want Eriksen over Bruno Fernandes. But the question for him will be, that's a lot of competition for those creative attacking midfield kind of roles.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have that issue at Tottenham because Harry Winks ain't a problem for me. Dele Alli's not there or in form anymore. And he flies back into that Spurs team. And as I said, that familiarity, the fans love him, irrespective. So it's going to be a tough one. But the kind of deal I want to see Man United do, because he's free, essentially. It doesn't eat into the quote-unquote budget. There's a few of those freebies that have gone around in recent times. Kamara was very, very cheap. There was the lad that went to Juve in January, really cheap. I forget his name now, midfielder. There's been a few of these cheaper players that have been available, and United haven't really capitalized. I think that's a bit of a mistake. But Eriksen's going to be an interesting one to sort of see what happens in relation to that. Viewers, make sure you're hitting those like buttons. Please just get this past 500 likes while we're live on the air. I am saving some of your super chats because they're more connected to Chelsea. I'll bring them up in the Chelsea section. So that's it. Yeah. Zakaria, that was the midfielder I was thinking of. There's so many.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I just thought he was free, or he's going to be free, or he was available for like £10 million because his contract was running out. It just seemed like a no-brainer. Man United don't do good business like that. It annoys me. It's sort of like pick up, a cheap £8 million, £10 million player and sort of developing from there. Ross here says, how have you not heard anything new about Darwin Núñez? Paul Joyce confirmed that we wanted him yesterday. I get that, Ross, but I'm going to sound a bit cheeky here. Paul Joyce is great. We did a video about Liverpool coming in for Darwin Núñez 6 days ago. So that's what Dean means by nothing new, because Liverpool looking at Darwin Núñez isn't new today. It's just been confirmed by a Liverpool journalist. So I mean that with respect to Paul Joyce and yourself there, Ross. So that's why there's nothing new.
Yeah.
Staying with Tottenham, there's a report this morning, and I know you spoke about this player in Spurs. I don't know if it was on a show or when we were having a little beer a few weeks back. But Gabriel Jesus, reportedly, there's been a €47 million offer made by Tottenham for the Man City forward. Is this someone that Spurs are still looking at, or does this feel a little bit kind of agent-y trying to force Arsenal along? What's the kind of latest around Gabriel Jesus and his move away from City, as far as you're aware?
And the feeling for me is that he's more likely to go to Arsenal, and that's probably a push for Arsenal to start getting their pieces in order, really, to get this going. We know that Tottenham have got interest, and they like the fact that he's versatile. They like the fact that he could fill in for Kane if necessary, but also it's those positions around Kane that they're really thinking about. But on the back of the weekend, one of the things that we have to look out for with Tottenham is Gareth Bale. Like, Gareth Bale is suddenly a really interesting talking point, and his future is something that is going to be sorted out reasonably quickly, and he has to get it right. So suddenly Gareth Bale's going to the World Cup in December. He's out of contract. Where does he go? He's linked with Cardiff. He's linked with Southampton. He's linked with Tottenham. He's linked with Newcastle. Tottenham's the one for me that makes absolute sense at this point in time. Not only is he free, but if you're talking about a player that is versatile, adaptable, can play when Kane's not fit, can play around Harry Kane, can have big impact in big moments, it's Gareth Bale. He's got the feel-good factor too. Like, when he went back to Tottenham last time around, the supporters weren't there. I think they might have got one game out of him right at the end of the season. A few thousand people managed to get in the stadium on the back of lockdown and see Gareth Bale in a Tottenham shirt again. Daniel Levy always dreamed of getting Gareth Bale back into a Tottenham shirt and having a last hurrah with Tottenham fans and, rebuilding that connection. Like Ronaldo with Man United, if you like. Yeah. So not only is he free, not only does he have that feel-good factor, not only does he have the motivation of getting himself in good form for Wales at the World Cup, but he have impact in games when you need impact. Tottenham dropped points in the season at silly times against silly teams. Their inconsistencies came at bad times. And Gareth Bale is the sort of player to have up your sleeve that is absolutely going to fit the bill. And at a time when you're looking at all these other alternatives to players as a support striker, players that rotate with Kane, whatever it is there anybody better than Gareth Bale? There's probably not. He's better, as a footballer, he's better than Gabriel Jesus. I'm not saying he's a better signing over the next 3 years than Gabriel Jesus, but as a one-on-one footballer, I'm taking Gareth Bale ahead of Gabby Jesus if that's what I'm posed with. When he went to Tottenham last time around, there wasn't any ego about him. Obviously, there were times when he wasn't in that team and stuff. He was really low maintenance. He didn't cause any problems to anybody. And at the end of that season, Gareth Bale actually did pretty well. Once he was fit, once he was refining his form, look back, and Gareth Bale actually did okay. So I have been told to look out for this one. this is a hunch that I've had for a while anyway, because I knew that Tottenham would be in this conversation. But after yesterday, with Wales qualifying from the World Cup, one of my Tottenham sources texted me and he was like, let's watch this then. Let's see what we do here then, because it is very plausible that we go back into the conversation and Bale comes to Spurs for a third time now. So let's wait and see. I mean, this is news before it's news, really. We're kind of anticipating this one more than anything, but it's a really interesting talking point, and it does have a knock-on effect for some other deals that are being spoken about right now.
Yeah, it'll be intriguing to see where he goes, as you say. That it's got a bittersweet yesterday. I was very happy to see Wales go to a World Cup, first time in 60-odd years. I've got my late uncle was Welsh, and I was lucky for him. Of course, the Ukraine missing out was quite sad because of their story and everything going on with them right now. But for Bale now, it's prolonged that. Maybe one more season, maybe a 6-month deal at a club. Just 6 months at a club or a year at a club, just to get through that World Cup period will be interesting to see. Yeah. We will move on to Arsenal a little bit later, viewers, and go a bit more in detail about the Jesus side of things. With Tottenham as well, though, Bastoni is a deal I know a lot of Tottenham fans are hungry for updates on. Is there been any developments or anything new in relation to this £50-odd million move for Bastoni?
I mean, we know that this is the guy that they see as the answer, if you like. Both Conte and Paratici want him, and they're starting to believe that by tracking what Inter Milan's intent is in the transfer window, that they might become open to selling him. And they're going to give it a go. They're definitely going to try and sign him. We've seen of all the headlines for Inter are around, like, can they get Dybala? Can they get Lukaku? Can they get this guy? Can they get that guy? And in the meantime, Tottenham are obviously got their eye on the Italian market anyway. It's where all their knowledge is. It's where they're going to kind of look to improve again after having success in the loan market with players from there in January. And Bastoni is one that they're going to push on with. Like, it hasn't pushed on, obviously, in the last week. It's been internationals and all the rest of it. This isn't one that's gathered any momentum since we last spoke. But I said then that I believe that Bastoni on the back of Perisic will be the next big target. And I still believe that is the next big one that they're going to go after. I don't think this is a deal that can be done tomorrow. But once this week's clear and all the internationals start to clear off, then I do think that this is one that Tottenham pursue.
Is there a sense or a feeling around this that Inter have obviously got their eyes on players? There's big talk of Lukaku, which I know we'll move on to. Is there a sense that they need money, though? A bit like last year, it was kind of played down by certain journalists. I know they're fine, they don't need to sell. Is that something that Spurs could try and kind of manipulate in some respects?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things that they've got in their sights. Like, if they're seeing that they're linked with Lukaku, who they know, Chelsea had almost £100 million deal in place to get him. So he's not going to be much cheaper than that. If they know the type of wages that a Dybala is going to need, then there's a feeling like, okay, if we can put together a package here, they might listen to it. They might feel that they can fix a defensive position for cheap. I know that they've got their eyes on a couple already, and the kind of players that Inter are looking for defensively are, I think, about 30 million. So even if they were to take, say, 50 million for Bastoni and then not have to spend all of that money on filling the defensive gap, but could also put that cash back into the market in another position, like, it's a winning position for them. So that is definitely something that Tottenham have got their eye on. It's still going to be a hugely significant amount of money for Tottenham to invest, though. So it's, we shouldn't underplay the fact that this is going to be a big, big transfer, and that Tottenham, have to really get it right if they're going to get this offer to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, Perisic was a relatively easy deal in comparison to get done. And the window hasn't even opened yet. International football is on right now, which, again, like when there's a big World Cup, it's very difficult to get deals done. Players are away, you can't get medicals done. Clubs love you can't even get the players around to film the intro videos or do the shoots. And we know how important all of that is now. So I think people have got to be a little. I'm seeing fans from all clubs really panicking. Oh, we haven't got a deal done yet. 6th of June, bruv. Relax a little bit. The season, I know that Man United are back in pre-season in 3 weeks' time, and 3 or 4 weeks they're back. But I do think there needs to be a little bit of patience, and a big deal will probably happen in the next sort of 7 to 10 days, and maybe that will kickstart
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
I don't think that's one that's dead for me. Again, when you just read about it, it's one of those things where it's almost the whole as of now, nothing's changed, but it's kind of there. It hasn't gone away. The player hasn't come out and unequivocally said, "I am not leaving." There hasn't been that sort of definitive statement from anybody.
Yeah.
Ending the deal. I think Spurs fans have got to remain a little bit patient there, as you say. But it's going to be intriguing to see what Antonio Conte builds. You already mentioned Bale as an example. So this mixture of Bales and Perisic's, and then this younger players he's also looking at, the Kulusevskis that's already there, of course, Bastoni. I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to cook and create at Spurs, because it isn't long-term thinking in many people's eyes. It's like, what can I do now to create a team that's able to challenge? But it's a different approach to a lot of the other world-class managers in the league. And I'm just intrigued to see what they build and how that kind of comes together. For me, it's barring my own club, which of course I have a vested interest in, what Spurs are doing is more interesting to me than any other team in the Premier League at the moment. I'm very. They're going to play a different style of football to the rest of the top six, in my opinion. It's going to be counter-attack based. A lot of people in the comments were saying, how can Bale be a better signing than Gabriel Jesus? Listen to what Dean said. Not for the next 3 or 4 years, but for a season-long move to get him in. They're going to play counter-attack football quite a bit. Yesterday against Ukraine on the counter-attack, could have scored 2 or 3 goals, and he's still got that in his locker. And I think he could be, as you say, an excellent signing coming on from that bench, playing in some of those tough, you got Spurs are going to have Champions League football as well. They're going to have to rotate. I think it's going to be a really exciting summer for Spurs fans, I feel.
Yeah, it's funny. I can see in the comments like people like laughing at me saying Bale is better than Jesus. He is. I 100% stand by that. I believe that Gareth Bale at his best is better than Gabriel Jesus at his best. We obviously don't see that much of Gareth Bale at his best because he's injured a lot or he's left out at Real Madrid, so we don't see it enough. But remember that, with Gareth Bale, the drive that you get from him comes from emotional stuff. Like for Wales, he plays on emotion and you get the best performances out of him. And that's why I feel like getting him into Tottenham and building that emotion again, having that one season send-off again with a club that he loved, recreating some of those Champions League memories too. Don't forget, the goal that he scored where he ran from the halfway line in the San Siro. He's had some unbelievable moments that he'd love to get back again. This could be the perfect emotional send-off for Gareth Bale if he gets it right. If he gets to have a good World Cup with Wales and he gets to have a good last season of club football. This is a guy that's seriously considered retiring on the back of his Real Madrid contract running out. And if Wales hadn't qualified for the World Cup, who knows? He actually might have gone through with that. It's going to be more difficult to do that than now. But I just think it's really intriguing, and the idea of Gareth Bale coming back to Tottenham, I personally want to see it, so I'm here for it.
Listen, again, if it goes wrong, there's no issue my end. I'm a Man United fan. It doesn't matter. But I quite like the sound of it.
Would you take it at Man United? Would you take a season of Bale at Man United?
No,
I'm not saying it's going to happen.
We've got Ronaldo, who's old. I don't need 2 of them. We've got our Ronaldo. They can have their Bale. Who do we need? We need Thierry Henry to come out of retirement and come back to Arsenal. That's what we need a bit of. It's hard for City. Who have City got of that ilk and that age group? Paul Dickoff. Do you know Paul Dickoff? Did he play for the City or
he someone did play like for City? Yeah, he did.
Yeah, Paul Dickoff back for City. That would be fun. Viewers, make sure like buttons are being hit. We are going to move on to Chelsea a little later in the search. If you're here for Dembele, Lukaku, Pulisic, stay with us. The updates on that are coming on the show. Don't leave us. Hit like buttons right now. But I want to stay in North London for a bit because we kind of briefly touched on Gabriel Jesus. And Arsenal are in an intriguing one this window because I'm always a little bit confused by what they're doing. Eddie Nketiah, and that's not a dig. It's just because it feels, I don't get it. So Eddie Nketiah, £100,000 a week new deal. Lacazette, we pretty much know he's going. The talk a couple of months ago was the deal for Gabriel Jesus is fairly imminent, or the big negotiations have been done, according to different media outlets. Then over the weekend, there was this big push and bid, and reportedly a second push for Scamacca. Some Gooners want him more now than Gabriel Jesus. I don't believe many Gooners knew who he was a week ago, if I'm being absolutely honest with you. I didn't see his name anywhere. Now they're talking about a second bid there. Still reportedly sort of not happy with the valuation of Gabriel Jesus. What's the latest in the sort of the striker department of Arsenal Football Club? What are you hearing, and where does the move look like it's going to develop?
I hope the Schumacher one is true, because I'd like to think that Arsenal are thinking a bit differently than we were led to believe. I mean, we know that they're going to sign a new 9. Eddie Nketiah knows that they're still going to sign a new 9. Like, he wants an assurance over game time and stuff, but at the end of the day, he can't be their only option in that position. And he knows somebody's coming. But, of all the names that were linked, there wasn't really a pattern or a trend to it or an obvious fit. And Schumacher, like the guys I do my podcast with, Ranks FC, they've watched a lot of him at Sassuolo, and they say he's great. Like, they're like this. They've talked about him all season, like what a good footballer he is, and all the rest of it. And to see Arsenal now linked with a player that is a little bit left field is probably a good thing. They shouldn't be going after all the obvious people that you would expect them to be after, like Calvert-Lewin and people like that. I understand why you might be in for a Calvert-Lewin or a Richarlison, but there is more to life than the Premier League. There are better signings to be had than just in the Premier League. And there are other clubs that explore that more frequently. You see clubs like Wolves tap into the Portuguese market regularly, and they have success with players that come through. West Ham this summer, you'll see them going into the French market because they see that is the place to be shopping right now for them. And I think that the same can be said. There are clubs in Italy and Germany where people should be shopping. And I think that it's a really good sign for Arsenal if this is where they are heading. I can't claim to know anything about this particular transfer. I'll have to chase it up before we speak next time. It's one that has come from a bit left field, but I do hope that they are having a vision beyond where they were. One thing we do know is that Arsenal are having to rethink a little bit their model for the summer. 3-4 weeks ago, I was told expect 6 signings for Arsenal. That's being dumbed down a little bit now. You're being told, okay, we'll expect 3 or 4 significant signings, and then the other 2 might be guys that don't feature quite so much yet. Might be that they're youngsters from abroad. Might be that, it's a younger player from further down the Football League ladder. But okay, that's fine. But those 3 or 4 signings that come in, they need to be guys that completely challenge and, I guess, I don't know, liven up that Arsenal selection policy in terms of their starting 11.
Yeah, I read something over the weekend that sort of suggested something similar. And if I want to look at this from a fan point of view, if I'm an Arsenal fan looking at this right now, they need to be, again, if it works, and there's always an element of, if they sign, I mean, by the way, Skamaka, I think that's how it's pronounced. The name in itself leads to some beautiful headlines potentially. It's a great name as well. We'll add that. It's like a superhero name. It's amazing. There is this element of, big money was bid for Vlahovic. Arsenal fans are expecting a big summer. They know the holes in their squad. They've been told to expect something big to be excited. It's now whether the club kind of delivers against that. And the way it sort of looks for me right now, and this could change, this could just be kind of agent talk, kind of clouded and murky in the water, is it feels very much like you kind of said, actually, let's kind of look at the model of last year. Let's go a little bit left field. Let's buy some younger players, some players a little bit more for the future. Of course, Yuri Tillemans is still a deal we know they're looking at. That's fairly cheap, but it's almost like they want to spend a little bit less money this time round. And I don't know how Arsenal fans feel about that. I think there's going to be a split, really. Some will go, well, we improved last year through buying lots of good young up-and-coming players. Why shouldn't we do it again? And then there's that other half where it feels the Gabriel Jesuses, the Yuri Tillemans, those 24 to 26-year-olds, experience, proven, almost they need that extra spine given to them, because we saw the Martinellis, the Odegaards, the Sakas really fade towards the end of last season because there was so much pressure upon their shoulders. It's just an intriguing one for me to hear that Arsenal might be just going to do a little bit less this summer than maybe they kind of alluded to. And a lot of the kind of Arsenal press kind of pushed in January. We didn't do it now, but it'll be prolonged to the summer. I don't know. I'd love to get Arsenal fans' opinions on this around, does it feel like it's going to be an underwhelming summer when you hear those sort of reports. It's especially with what all the other top six are going to do. That's what I think Arsenal fans have got to look at, because they caught up this year. They caught City, they caught Man United, went past Man United. You know, Spurs were only just ahead of them. They weren't even that far away from Chelsea in the end. And it just feels like if all those clubs do good business and theirs is a bit underwhelming, the fact that the manager, and I mean this with respect to Mikel Arteta, he ain't of the level of Conte, Tuchel, Klopp, or Pep anyway. That in itself is a problem. So the Arsenal situation feels very interesting right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you've got to, they've got to back Arteta's vision. He's come a long way in the last year, and obviously Arsenal have these big highs for 5 games and then huge lows for 5 games, but that stability will come as this team starts to grow and they start to merge, and there are good signs there. But part of the reason that those big dips come is because they get a big suspension and an injury at the same time, and suddenly you're playing your centre back at fullback and your centre midfielder, at fullback, and all these kind of things, and then suddenly your centre midfield is exposed, and people are attacking your centre backs in ways they haven't been attacked for the last 5 games when they've been protected. So they know that they need another layer of depth to that squad, and that's what's coming. Was really impressed by what they did last year and the way that they attacked it, and the people that I speak to are genuinely hopeful that those 3 or 4 signings that they get in will be really good signings.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And I wouldn't be saying to Arsenal fans, organise a protest and start panicking at this point. That is not what I'm alluding to. It's just almost, if some of these deals, like the Gabriel Jesus deal, I understand the point on Scamacca in terms of a very good option, left field, maybe less competition. It's just hearing that they're still umming and ahhing over the £50-odd million valuation. And I know he's only got one year left on his deal, but he is an established, high-quality football player that can give you the next 6 or 7 years. And you can get him. Yes, you can wait a year and get him for free. But how much could them goals and then performance? How much are them goals and performances worth? If that makes sense, it's almost a case. And you're not going to get him for free, because if he's out of contract, you're going to pay a much bigger signing on fee, much bigger wages. You look at the overall cost over a 4 or 5 year period. He might be 20 million, 25 million pound cheaper next year in its entirety. But what would that extra bit of money be worth to Arsenal? If you get where I'm coming from, and Arsenal fans have got to put that pressure on their club to make sure they don't kind of deviate too much. They bring in that kind of star quality. Is there any sort of other updates at all? I know like sort of Hickey and Yuri Tillemans kind of lightly touched on them. Is there been any sort of further progression in those deals? Are they very much where they were about a week ago?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the left back is one that they really want. Hickey still on the agenda. I mean, one of the things that Arsenal need to look at in terms of these signings are, do you look for somebody who's got that versatility that can play fullback, maybe on both sides, or are you looking at somebody who is just an out and out left back? I'm told that Hickey, they're so hot on him that it would be quite a big surprise if they didn't follow through with this and actually have a good crack at getting him. So I do expect that to come through. But ultimately, Arsenal are in a situation whereby they cannot stand still, and they're afraid to stand still because they know how quickly they can fall away again. They have to invest in this market, but they have to get it right too. So the deals won't be dragged down to the wire, but at the same time, they can't rush into these offers right here, right now, because they want to make sure that they're getting these players at the right price and at the right time for them to suit what Arteta's planning to do in pre-season.
Yep, it's going to be intriguing to see what happens with Arsenal. Fairly slow at the moment. And even if I was talking to a few content creators, I'm like, I don't really know what to do my shows on at the minute because nothing feels like it's really happening. But I suppose that's the nature of the beast. Viewers, it is. It'll all motor on forward very, very soon, I'm sure. Chelsea next. Lots of questions here from the viewers. And there's one we're going to start off with, one of the main titles of the show today that's come out here. One that says Dembele is only just going to be another Pulisic for us unless Unless signing if signed. I don't even know.
Useless signing if signed.
Oh, useless. Sorry. My dyslexia kicked in there. Lots of people asking questions. Uncle Dean, any Dembele news is what's being pushed out here. Dembele. A lot of the Chelsea fans want to know what's going on with that deal. There's all types of reports from done deal through to it being very close, Chelsea being encouraged. What's your understanding of that current situation?
Yeah, look, obviously a guy that Chelsea have been hot on for a while. And look, the Chelsea have been waiting for a response basically from his agent and to get an understanding of like, how soon can we expect to start moving forward with this? Like, it doesn't seem like you're going to be staying where you are. But Barcelona's still waiting to hear back too. PSG in the background, like perhaps something can happen there. Thomas Tuchel is such a big fan of Dembele. He's desperate to get this deal done. He really sees if this deal could happen, then it means that they can really start to consider letting some other players go. Like, there's obviously been a lot of talk about how this front line, how the attacking options, the creators of that team, how many of them stay, how many of them go. And there's no doubt a couple of them are going to go, but which ones, like which level of player can he afford to let go? So Tuchel wants to know too from Chelsea's recruiters, like how quickly can we get this deal done? And I saw somebody mention in the comments a little while ago, like, isn't Dembele a risk? I think they said, how many games does this guy miss? And it has to be a factor that you take into account here that Ousmane Dembele has had serious injuries in the last couple of years, and they've affected his hamstring and his knee. He's missed nearly 60 games over the last 2 and a bit years. That's a lot of matches to miss. The only positive you could really say is that, like, from March onwards this year, he started to put that behind him. He started to gather some game time and momentum and form and belief again in himself. Like, this was a guy, though, when he signed for Barca, that was all about, he was rapid. He was like slaloming through people. He was, he's such a good footballer at his best. If he can be that level of footballer that we saw back then when he was at Dortmund and stuff, then fine. But Chelsea have to get this right. Like, Chelsea going for, players on this level of wage that Dembele is going to command, they get a fair few wrong, don't they? Like, let's be fair, like a fair few don't go the way that they exactly anticipate. And I know that there are people probably on here who think Marina Granovskaya isn't doing a good job at the moment. I personally think that she'll do fine in this window. But Ousmane Dembele, all I can say, like, from a Chelsea point of view, is a hot target, one they want to close in on as soon as they possibly can. They believe that they will see off other competition because they believe that Ousmane Dembele wants to be a Chelsea player at this stage if he doesn't get new terms, and it's not looking great in that sense.
Yeah, listen, I think that the only question mark I would have as a football fan about Dembele is that body. Can it take, with the money that he's going to earn, are you going to get enough bang for your buck? Or is he going to be on that medical table a little bit too much? If he stays fit, he could be a sensational player because ability-wise, there aren't very many players that in the game right now that are better than him. It's just that fitness side of things. There's no doubt about it. There's a super chat that came through here. I think it's connected to this. I want to make sure. Yeah, it says here just how many injuries from 2020 to 2022 has Dembele had? I think he's worse than Pulisic. A hell of a lot worse is what I think you mean there. That is my concern. Something about he's a good player, but his injury record is what I'm concerned about. And I think
as I say, like nearly 60 games in the last 2 years or so. Like, that's how many games he's missed. He had a significant knee problem in 2021 that kept him out for 14 matches. And then it must have been a year before that, maybe 18 months before that, he had his serious hamstring injury, which on and off kept him out for 20 odd games. And then in between, there were little niggles that kept him on the sidelines. So there's no doubt like there's a medical history there which makes some worrying reading for a guy that hasn't really flourished at stages of his career when you would have expected him to. He's now 25. You're thinking like that spell for him between 22 and 25 has been really, really interrupted. He wants someone, though, now needs somebody that fully understands him. And that is Thomas Tuchel. And that is why he's interested in the move to Chelsea.
Absolutely. Another player, of course, linked with the big move to Chelsea was in London. Then was at NBA games. Now currently in the French squad. I think he's in the French squad. I read it over the weekend. Jules Kounde feels about as close to being done as the deal can be, according to most reports. Is this one that you would expect? You don't see any kind of Chelsea fans, I think, are a little nervous that something's going to like come out of the blue and stop this. Does this still feel like it will happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, their takeover has literally just happened. Like their sanctions are just being lifted. That life is just starting to return to normal, and the new ownership are starting to get an understanding of what now needs to be done. And of course, like in terms of conversations with Kounde, like everything that could be done while transfers were out of action was done. Like they've done as much as they can possibly do, and now June 10th from there we kick on and we start to see whether they can get this over the line. I'll be shocked if it doesn't happen. I'll be annoyed if this drags on for too much longer because I'm so bored of talking about it. But Jules Kounde, it's almost like the new Jadon Sancho. This has gone on for so long now. I hope he's worth the hype. He's obviously a good player. He's obviously somebody that they feel fits because they've been quite aggressive over the past year. But yeah, this one I hope will be tied up within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. It's just, it feels like it's been on this edge for such a long, it feels like it's been quote unquote close for a long time. So yeah,
it has, it genuinely has. And that's the thing with it. It's not like it's ever gone away.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. It was just Sevilla playing silly buggers at the end of last season. And then you had this whole thing with Roman, which just slowed it down further. It kind of feels to me that Roman's situation hadn't have happened, it would have almost been one of those deals. And Chelsea have done this a couple of times. I think with Pulisic, they did it with maybe one other time they've done it where almost the deal was kind of done before the end of the season, if that makes. There was another player recently. Now it might be Liverpool did it with Konate. It could have been one of those deals where it's almost announced before the season's even over.
Yeah.
But of course it got slowed down.
Sorry, another thing I was going to say, just that in terms of the recruitment, I mentioned Marina and a record, but like there has been a reasonable amount of talk too about the fact that she might be leaving, and it was thought that like after Abramovich announced he was going, that she would go too. Then it came back the other way and was like, nope, she's not going to be going. And now it does seem to be back in the air a little bit. I was having a conversation with someone last week who said they kind of still expect her to leave the club. Now, if that does happen, then that is pretty significant. And if that did happen before Kounde was announced, then I guess there would be a segment of Chelsea supporters that would be worried about, like, now what happens? Are we going back to square one? Blah, blah, blah. Like, that probably wouldn't happen. But keep an eye on any Grofsky news in the next week or so, because I think that we'll get an understanding of her position one way or the other pretty soon, just from like murmurs that I'm hearing around people I speak to at the club. And I know that there has been gossip about it on Twitter and stuff, and Chelsea communities are wondering if she's going. And while I think, she's been unbelievable for the club, there does seem some doubt right now.
Most certainly. Again, she's one of those polarizing figures that I come across as the host of fan content is almost some Chelsea fans at some point talk about her as if she is God. And then others, I'm not going to repeat the language they use about her because that's not what I would never speak about a woman like that anyway, let alone live on air. But yeah, so it's an interesting one and to see what's going to happen there. But we'll keep our eyes out for it, and I'm sure you'll update us as and when you know anything, Dean. So a number of exits are being looked at as well. A lot of the viewers are saying what's happening with Ziyech, what's happening with Werner. Of course, Pulisic is linked with a move to Liverpool of all clubs, which again for me was completely out of nowhere. They were linked with him. Exits from Chelsea. What are you hearing, and who's next likely to be on that chopping block?
I mean, look, Pulisic for me is the one that is the most interesting at the moment. Jurgen Klopp, huge admirer of Pulisic, and when he actually joined Chelsea, it kind of caught us out because actually all the talk was that he was going to go to Liverpool, and people in the US thought he would end up at Liverpool with Klopp. There's a good bond there with Pulisic's family, who was so important in his career. It was felt that Liverpool wanted to embrace like not only the player and the level he was already at, but also obviously the fact that he's American is significant for clubs right now. For Pulisic himself, he is in a position where he is having to weigh up what happens next. The World Cup is just around the corner for him. He wants to be in good form for that competition. Obviously, the US are in England and Wales group at the World Cup. And look, people here might look at that as an easy fixture against the US. I can promise you it is not. Like, as in my other life on Ranks FC, and as somebody who's married into an American family, I watch a lot of that team, and I've watched it grow. And there are reasons to believe that that US team could not only give England a good game, but could actually get out of that group. But Pulisic is integral to it. And one of the things that Pulisic does is he really leans heavily on his dad for advice, and has done throughout his career. And his dad's kind of managed him carefully. And I spoke to his dad when he came into Chelsea, and he told me how he was settling, and he was, he really is. This is a very, very serious football family who have had to very carefully manage their path to make sure that he went from being US wonder boy, who was spoken about, to be the greatest thing the country had ever produced in soccer, to actually making it big. And he's there, but he's not quite. Like, I feel there have been times at Chelsea, was it the back end of the season before, when like he was deciding big games? He was the guy for the big occasion. He was like in everyone's FPL teams. Like, Pulisic had this run of a couple of months where he was brilliant. At Chelsea right now, it hasn't been going that good for him. Look, he splits the Chelsea fan base. There's no doubt about that. I see some Chelsea fans who get him. I see some Chelsea fans that don't get it. One source that I speak to thinks that it's quite likely that he leaves. And if that's the case, if he thinks that and Liverpool are in the market, then I think it is the best place for Pulisic to end up next. He would fit that team perfectly. Klopp would get him 100%. They've got a spot opening up if Mane leaves, whereby they can continue to rotate that front line. Pulisic can play different roles within it. He's got the work rate. He's got the right mentality. I genuinely think that if Pulisic is going to leave, then he should go to Liverpool. And as I say, like, that was the hot rumor like a few years ago. So it might just be one to watch out for.
It's an intriguing one. I'm just sort of listening to you, and obviously, I mean, you made one mistake in there, Dean. You said the word soccer, and people don't like
I did it on purpose because I was talking about America. I had to say soccer.
I know. It's funny. Sometimes I share your stuff, and they're like, "I can't take Dean seriously." Oh, why? He has soccer.
He's got soccer in his name. Well, Dean Jones' football was taken, and I was like, well, like most of my audience is American, so I might as well just use soccer.
Yeah,
and then I've got loads of people being like, soccer. It's like, what about Soccer AM? It's the biggest football show we've ever had in this country. Everyone's forgotten about the main word in it.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one. But on Pulisic, I'm just reading the comments. I'm kind of like, Chelsea fans are predominantly, as far as I've seen, and I'm not looking at all the Chelsea forums and don't follow everyone that's a Chelsea fan. It's like, oh, we're kind of happy for him to go. We want better. Now that he's linked to Liverpool, suddenly there is this, oh, hang on. We've had KDB. We've had Mo Salah. Could Pulisic leave, go to one of their big rivals in England and flourish? That would be, that is the fear in this.
Yeah.
That is the real big fear in this situation. Now, as KJ puts up there, like of course, Pulisic does have an injury record worry as well. There's no doubt about it. But at the right price, under Jurgen Klopp, nearly every single signing that Jurgen Klopp makes works. Nearly every single signing. I can almost see I can feel the fear in the responses from Chelsea fans when they see that link. Almost as if to say, although we may not want him, we definitely don't want him going 250 miles north to Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp. He'll become a better player. He'll develop asthma, but he'll become a better player. Whatever it is they're doing up there, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, him going to Liverpool could be absolutely massive, with Mane sort of being on the cusp of leaving, Mo Salah's contract situations.
Yeah,
it's certainly an intriguing one.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, like once if Liverpool are interested in one of your players, you're like, you've got to be part of you. It's like, hang on, why? If they're interested in our player, do we definitely want to be getting rid of him? Don't forget too, Chelsea's new ownership, the American connection there. Not entirely convinced they would want Pulisic leaving right now. Like from a sporting point of view, from a shirt sales point of view, whichever way you want to dress it up, like Pulisic is a great asset to have in the Premier League. There is no doubt about that. I know people talk about his injury record. Look, he's probably missed about half the amount of games though that Ousmane Dembele has. So if you're on one hand saying we're happy for Pulisic to go, he's always injured, but then you're signing Ousmane Dembele, who's been injured for twice as long, then you need to sort out what your judgment is here, because like that doesn't add up. And Pulisic, I think a lot of his injury, I think he had a abductor injury. Did he have a tear or something? Anyway, it was it's not the same sort of injuries that a Dembele has had, who relies on pace, whose hamstrings have had caused him problems. So look, we'll see. I personally, as I say, have been told that Pulisic could go. And if that's the case, I only see him in England anyway, going to Liverpool. If not, then maybe other opportunities open up. Look, AC Milan are about to have a big buyout and are looking for a new attacking creator. Maybe he comes onto their radar instead of someone like Raheem Sterling that they've also looked at. Like there are going to be other opportunities that crop up.
Yeah, listen, and yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see how it works out. And it's just one of those. It's one of those transfers that I like because it's so split. We had Matty there who put the comment up. Listen, I'll drive him to Liverpool myself. I don't care if he leaves.
Yeah, I know Chelsea. A lot of Chelsea fans say that. Yeah.
And it's like he could go there, be this injury flop. Dembele comes in, maybe the beautiful English weather fixes his muscles. It works perfectly. He's suited to the climate here. And, we've seen this, I'm being very flippant there. No one take that seriously. I know that, relax, right? It's a joke. But he comes to Chelsea and kills it and fulfills his potential. Pulisic goes up there and is a crock, and Liverpool regress because of it. Like so many things can happen. But at the same time, he leaves, goes to Liverpool, and turns into the new Mo Salah. There is this element of not again. Like the fact that KDB, like right now, KDB and Mo Salah should be in this Chelsea team, and that changes how good Chelsea are. Like Chelsea are a different team if those two are there right now. Could Pulisic be that guy? Maybe. In terms of Lukaku, and I kind of briefly touched on it earlier when it comes to the Inter chat. A lot of talk that he's really pushing for this move away. I know you said last week, and we put the quote out, and I didn't even mean for it to. Some Chelsea fans really didn't like this whole. It basically, if Tuchel changes his style of play, I'm happy to stay type thing. It does kind of feel like a real power play for him to push himself away. Is that still the case, or is he more resigned to staying now? And that's only been a week, but is that very much what he's trying to do? Do you feel?
He can't thrive under the sort of football that Tuchel's been playing. Like that's why he was so frustrated. He doesn't want to leave Chelsea. He's not desperate to get out of there. In fact, he's desperate to be remembered as a success, and he's kind of devastated that this might not work out second time around, because he was convinced that coming back he was going to smash it. But look, Lukaku has to be open-minded at this stage, and while his preference definitely is that things would work out for him at Chelsea, there's a good chance they don't. And if the next round of talks at Chelsea don't confirm to him that he is going to be the guy for them next season, that bags a load of goals because they're playing the style of football that suits him, and that he can thrive in that outfit, then he has to consider where else to go. And like last week, you'd have seen the stories about his lawyer having meetings with Inter. Like, it's true. It's true that discussions have taken place about Lukaku and Inter Milan and whether something could happen. Both parties definitely open to it. We have to see whether that could work financially. Like there's a lot to take into account. The main guy I speak to close to Lukaku, like he's got some reservations about it, but he seems like quite chilled about the fact. Like he's kind of like, let's see what happens is kind of what he said. He's like, there's stuff going on, but let's see what happens. There's a small possibility that Bayern Munich come in if Lewandowski goes. Obviously, the amount of money that this deal might cost potentially pushes them to one side and makes them reconsider that. But if you're going to lose Lewandowski, if you want somebody to come to Bundesliga and make sure that you win it for like an 11th year in a row, then there's worse options than turning to Lukaku. So yeah, let's see what the next round of talks bring with Lukaku, because he's been up and down, and the interview he gave at back end of last year was obviously a bad idea on his behalf. He was told not to give that interview. He was told not to say the things he did. And he was like, nobody tells me what to do. This is how I feel. This is what I'm going to say. I think he probably did regret it to some extent, but ultimately he did it. I just want to see Lukaku doing well, to be honest. Like, he was so good for Inter Milan the season before. He came back and I was like, oh, finally, he's going to like shut a few people up who were like, Lukaku can't do it. And he hasn't done that. So I just want to see him have a good season next year.
Listen, you were the one. I haven't said this on the terrace yet. You were the individual that convinced me that this return was going to be prodigal son-esque. It was going to have this, and he started so well. Like the first,
it did start well. It did start well. Yeah.
Like that at Man United. I do think with Lukaku, I do think there's. I want to say there's something wrong with him. I don't even mean it in a horrible way. I'm not being nasty about him. There's almost this element of, I don't quite know if he has the mentality to be the best player 38 games a season, week in, week out for and I know Inter Milan are a massive team, but there's a lot more pressure, I feel, on the Premier League, more eyes, much bigger viewing numbers. I feel like the media scrutiny globally is a lot bigger. I just don't know if I think maybe he's better off somewhere. And I'm not even saying Inter Milan's small, because they're a huge club. They've done treble. They've won Champions League. Serie A is a big league. I just sometimes feel like he's better off that. Like whenever he's at a club that's slightly smaller, less higher profile, he seems to thrive. As soon as it's the big center stage, it almost feels like something goes wrong. Maybe. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, I think that there's a judgment of Lukaku that comes immediately as second he steps on a pitch in England. I don't feel that he has that in other countries. I think it's similar to how Tammy Abraham's been able to thrive with Roma. I feel that he doesn't have the same judgments against him the second he goes out. And in fact, Roma totally embraced him, and he's had the season of his life, basically. He's loving it. And that's what Lukaku had at Inter. So he got to such a good place there that he thought, right, this is it. I'm feeling so good. I can go back and I can do it. But then suddenly you have a bad game. The judgments start coming back on you. Like when he was at United, there was so much said about him being lazy, being this, being that. And I remember I did a thing with him, and I was sat chatting to him, and it was off camera and stuff. And he was just chatting casually, and like Lukaku, by the way, like the nicest guy, like such a cool bloke. And he's like, oh, I've just gone back from training. I was like, oh, someone else said United weren't in today. He goes, oh no, they weren't. I just went in. And he'd been doing like that day. He'd done 2 extra sets of running sessions, and I was speaking to one of his agents after, and I was like, has he really been doing that? He goes, it does it all the time. Like this guy puts in so much work that is unseen, and yet has this reputation for being lazy, not caring, blah, blah, blah. And it's strange that can come across, because I understand why people would think that of Lukaku. Like I could have watched him the next week and probably thought it of him at Man United. But because you've heard that, and it's the kind of insight that most people don't get, and like it's a privileged position to even be in, but it's just really interesting for me. It does, I guess it sways my vision of him, because if I know the kind of work that this guy's putting in behind the scenes, then I expect it to at some point show, and unfortunately the Premier League hasn't.
Yeah, I think what you said there about that center stage thing, the pressure that's put upon him in England compared to Italy. That's why I've always said this about the country you play in is so key. The style of football within the nation, the speed of play, the culture, the way the fans treat you, the media attention. I remember listening to a French journalist speak about how in France, for instance, very, very rarely is a player's personal life brought into the media. So you could be a serial adulterer, doing some madnesses off the pitch. And as long as it isn't illegal, no one really reports about it, or no one delves into it. The pressure isn't put upon you. The fans don't jeer you for it. It's just, no, we only focus on you as a football player. Where in England, as we all know, like you can if you're at the right clubs and if you're the right type of player, if you're a Wayne Rooney as an example, a David Beckham, a Marcus Rashford, now players like Lukaku gets it because of the big clubs he's been at. Everything you do from, I remember Memphis Depay, he moved to the UK, and it was trending news because he bought 3 boxes of Capri Sun from a supermarket. I sometimes feel that level of, although a lot of players will say it doesn't bother me, I think it does. I think it really gets to certain people, and it can kind of become a bit of a distraction to them in many ways. And it's going to be intriguing to see what happens. And I think the one thing I'd say is this: I don't think Tuchel's going to change the way that he plays for love nor money. He's a system manager, like a Klopp, like a Pep. I think Lukaku is probably going to have to leave. And if the reports last week are to be believed of like a £20 million upfront loan fee for a year and an option of 60 odd million to buy, if they can get like 70, 80 million pound back for Lukaku, I think Chelsea should get, personally, I think they should cash in on that. But listen, he might stay, he might deliver. I don't know. There's something about it where I just don't think he will. And he might do back in Italy, you know what I mean? And whatever else. Maybe Chelsea will bring Tammy Abraham back. I don't know. No, they won't.
They're not doing that, that's for sure.
No, definitely.
But yeah, look, it's going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out. But Chelsea have got a lot of planning to do. As I say, like now we can start to see it get underway. And from Friday, once this transfer window really kicks off, we'll start to get a better grasp of like how many changes we're actually going to see to this squad. I do think there'll be genuinely a couple of significant ones. So that whether that's like Lukaku going, whether that's Kante or Jorginho going, obviously Kounde coming in, but will they get that other centre back? Will they get a Koulibaly? Will they get an Ousmane Dembele? Like there are some serious changes that could happen to that Chelsea team, but only once they start making those changes will we see whether we can have a 3-horse race for the title next season. At the moment, Chelsea have got way too much work to do to know whether they're going to be in that bracket.
Yeah, it's going to be an intriguing one to see how that all ends up. Hang on. What's this? Terry, you're a liar. Say what you're accustomed to saying about Lukaku, bruv.
What do you normally say, mate?
No, maybe I think I say that he's...
What's your agenda? Come on.
My agenda? I don't know what he's talking about. Like, as a fan, I've said things in the past. I feel like when he was at Man United, I think he looked overweight for a professional athlete. I feel like the pounds were on him. I don't think his touch and his ability in the build-up play is good enough at times. I don't. But I put a lot of that down to, and I said this about Chelsea a lot this year, and I've made sort of flippant jokes about it, like he keeps texting his ex. He's not focused on his new relationship. But I feel like like in anything in life, Dean, and I don't know if you've been in this position professionally, when you're thinking too much about the next step or, I should have stayed where I was, you're never concentrating in the moment well enough.
No,
I think things like that impact Lukaku. It's almost, you've got to, if you want to make it a success at Chelsea, that's where your mind's got to be. Stop thinking about Inter or where the next move's going to be. You see it in boxing a lot. A boxer, we saw Anthony Joshua do it when he fought Andy Ruiz. He was already talking about the next fight. When he fought Usyk, he was already talking about the next fight against Tyson Fury. The 2 times he's done that in his career, he's been beaten because focusing properly on the task in hand. And I think that's the key thing for me. So that's what I've said before. And of course, I'm a football fan that hosts a football channel for football fans. We say loads of things that we don't. Sometimes people take our jokes and they take it seriously. Like I might have called him Timberlands before. Would I say it to his face? No, he's 6'3". Like he's a big guy. I'll be like, Lukaku, I love you. No, but I'd tell him straight. Some of the stuff I've said, I say to his face. I don't know. People are weird. But I wouldn't be nasty to his face because I don't hate the guy. That's football chat. Like we were saying before we came on air. Right, people take this stuff far too seriously. Like, he might have said what he said about Inter, but there's no reason to abuse him or like want him hurt. He's a footballer. He's just do his thing. So we go. Listen, viewers, we appreciate you all tuning in today. Record numbers for me and Dean, just under 2,000 people watching live. Before you leave, please smash the like and the share button. We've got more journalists coming on this week. Rob Blanchett will be back. Ben Jacobs back on Wednesday. We've got the Top 6 show tonight where we're looking at some different transfer rumours and some of the biggest talking points in football at the moment. We've got a great panel lined up. Anita is on. I think Gao is on the show. Patrick is back with us tonight as well. 6 p.m. we go live. So be here on the terrace. Dean, a pleasure as always, my friend.
That's a mate.
Thank you for all the insight. Really appreciate it. Killed some of my dreams, but it's all good. It's okay. Until next time, everybody, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And we'll see you all again very